Michelle, would you like to present it?
I can. There's people that signed up before me.
Well, we had expected if you had come to give us your take without being part of the sign-up list. You know, whatever, anything you have to offer before we get into a discussion would be great.
That's fine. Is that okay, Gail? Yeah. State Representative Michelle Cook, 499 Charles Street, right up the hill. First, I want to thank you, Dave, for coming out. We had already invited Dave to come and speak to the Turf Committee next Tuesday. So this kind of preempted that, and so I want to thank him for making a journey and a second journey next week. I also want to explain that there has been complete communication here. I have emails to prove the communication that has been going back and forth, who knew, who didn't know, and the fact that this goes back until April and May of our last legislative session. And I think the one thing that needs to also be explained before I go into all of this is the fact that I was willing to come and speak. Ken had asked me to come and speak at a Board of Ed meeting in August. I never had the August date. I also had explained that the information wouldn't be ready for us until August 28th. I was out of town. My grandfather passed away on the 16th of August, and apparently there was a meeting on the 20th. I got back on the 21st. So I would have had no problem coming in and speaking to everybody and giving information, and maybe that would have eliminated some of the questions that you had for Dave. But moving forward, the story goes like this. I had reached out to Cheryl and I had reached out to Mike and asked them back at the end of April and sometime in May if there was the ability for us to, if I could find the funds and maybe we could, find a grant for the money, because our track is in dire straits. Our fields are in bad shape and they're dangerous. I have a daughter here that's in 10th grade. She is an athlete. She runs on that track. She marches in the band. It's dangerous to the point where it's one of those things that you don't want your child to be on. And the more that they were on it and the more parents that I heard that this is dangerous for them and that kids are going to be receiving injuries, we're looking at a possible lawsuit, and that's something that we need to prevent. And when you hear people that come in from other schools and they say, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that you all are competing on this surface, then there's something that really needs to be done. When you have a soccer field that has drainage grates in the soccer field playing surface, this is dangerous. When you have a football field that you cannot see straight across the field because it has a hump like this, although understood drainage, this is dangerous. This is bad for the kids. This is what led me to ask, is this something that we are interested in? Yes, it was. What do we need to do? I was sent to the Turf Committee. That would be Ed Aram and a group of people that have been around since 2007, that have been working on something that was actually put in your capital improvement plan for 2013 and 2014, and I have no idea because I don't sit on your side when that was removed. So I went forward. The information they were asking about, the bond request, this is protocol for us as a legislature. If there's money that we think that we could be able to use, then we submit a bond request. It's a simple form. I don't know, you guys have this. It's not filled out in its entirety. My name is on the original form. There's some other things that are missing on here. I believe that I had forwarded it to Ken and said there are some things that are not the same. Probably needs explaining before you hand it out. The total cost of the project, where it said $3 million, that was my handwriting, and I said it could possibly be up to $3 million. The bond commission knows that. The bond committee knows that. I put it into the bond committee. The bond committee submits it for vote. Sometimes it holds for a long amount of time. Sometimes it doesn't. We were in desperate need of a track. They had some bond dollars that was available. We were very fortunate to receive $2.737 million and one. Not sure about the dollar. The way that this process works is this, and we have a liaison. This would be Dave from DEEP. The act is an urban development grant because it's a community field. The public schools sit on community property, and part of the agreement is that you all use the facilities, the community property, but you're responsible for maintaining them. The way that the grant is written, and I did not know that it was going through the urban development grant, but that's how it played out. It goes through the city. The city is responsible for maintaining the project. They're responsible for approving things, how it works. I've already spoken with the mayor's office and the mayor to see if we can utilize the turf committee, because they've already been in the thick of this for so long, that they would help be an overseeing body. They are an ad hoc committee. They're not a standing committee, and that was why I reached out to the mayor's office to make sure that we could utilize them. The information that you see here, and to Vincent Marola's question, the rest of this stuff has nothing to do with us. The only thing that was handed in was a bond request form, the proposed budget, the blueprints, and then what you see in big print there. The other thing also is, not only is Ed Aram's name on there because he was the chairman, if you will, of the turf committee, Dave Becetta's name was on the grant as well. He has been in the mix all along also. So it will go through the city. You all cannot reject it. It's a city grant. It's community fields. It's not just Torrington Public School fields. That field never closes. So you have people that are on here till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night in the dark. I've been here. I've seen people on those fields, on the track. Kids play Frisbee at night. They play glow Frisbee. They do all sorts of things. They're kids. But you also have people, senior citizens, you have other community members that are out here using our track each and every day. So it's a community project. It's not solely a school project. So the question was for whoever had asked if you could reject it. You guys can suggest to the city council that you reject it, but quite honestly, I haven't found one person on the city council that thinks it's even remotely logical to reject this. It's something that absolutely needs to be done. But the city still has the ability to move forward with the track regardless of whether, and the project, whether or not you guys agree or not, because it is a city urban development community grant. So what will happen from there? Tim Waldron is going to be the liaison from the mayor's office, because we obviously know that there's some changes that are going to happen there. He has been the person that has been put in position to make sure that he stays in constant communication with the mayor's office and the turf committee and myself. We've spoken, I would probably say every day, if not more, over the past couple of weeks, and making sure that they are looped in and they know what's going on as well. It's not something that was supposed to come in front of the Board of Education for approval because of the way that it was. It is a community urban development grant. The city will work with Dave. Dave will work with myself and the turf committee, and we're requesting that somebody from the Board of Ed, but Dave Becetta is on that turf committee, so maybe he can be the liaison for you all. He's been on there, I don't know, but I'm assuming since 2007. So if you all decide that he's the person that you want to be the person to go back and forth, I would, he's been a constant there. I think that for funding purposes, you all have already paid for half. We've already gone through that. So for the $2,500 you have already paid, so you know that the project is going forward. We have maintenance costs already built in to your budget, so I think that it's an unfair assessment what's been proposed here. We know that turf takes less maintenance, quite honestly, because typically you would have to sweep it once every 3 or 4 weeks, depending on its usage, and that sweeper was built into the project proposal. And I think that that's something that Ed Aram can speak on, because he's been in the thick of that as well. And I know that you also have had conversations about how are you going to maintain things moving forward. Well, a few years back, and the superintendent prior to Cheryl, Chris Leone and I had drafted a piece of legislation that gives the boards of education the ability to keep up to 3% of your operating budget from the city funds if you run in a surplus into a capital fund and you do not have to give them back. 1%, I'm sorry, $300,000, give or take. You have the ability to budget in. We've legislated that for you a few years back, and so if your budgeting and spending is appropriate, that capital fund legislation was done, I wouldn't say 4 years ago. It's already there. So you have the ability to do that. But on a sidebar, to go back, the turf committee will work with the mayor's office and city council, and we will go forward from there. It will go out for a bid because it's a city project. You have to get, a state money, you have to get 3 bids. So once we're ready to go with that, we'll reach out to 3 different, people know, they already know that it's out there. I have not contracted with the state for anything, so I can't really say how they find out that information, but I'm sure there's some people out there that have. They'll propose a project proposal with funding and the likes, and then it comes back to us, and we have the ability as city council and the turf committee and whoever else the city council and mayor's department decide has a say, and that's how the project gets approved, and then that's how it goes forward. We have high expectations. We would love to see this start taking place starting at the end of this football season, and then possibly by the next spring or the next fall, we have a turf field and our kids can play on it. It's great expectations, but quite honestly, it's something that it's seriously overdue. And I don't know how that plays out, and I also know that there's been conversations with schools that are saying, you know what, I don't want to run here this year. I don't want to compete here this year. It's dangerous for our athletes. So we might not have a choice. I'm sure I didn't cover everything, and I will happy to answer any questions that you guys have. But I think that by making this something that it's really not, this is a community project. It's not about a football field. It's not about a football team. It's about the community, and it's about the school, the athletes, and pride that we have here. We have a community that's known for their music department, and our marching band compete. They practice on a field. They perform on a field. They're known all over the place. They deserve something, you know, to be proud of too. So it's not just athletes. And quite honestly, we are not in compliance with the American Disabilities Act. We have coaches and coaching staff that are disabled. They can't get up to the top of the box. We are not in compliance to that. It's not fair to them. We have no visiting stands, and right now we have visiting stands that are sitting on a track, which is tearing up a track that's already torn up. But we have no place to put our visiting people. So this is something that's desperately overdue. This is why it went forward. That was the steps that were taken. That's how it came about. And it was with approval and the wishes of the superintendent. I had spoken with Cheryl about this. I had spoken with Mike McKenna about this. It wasn't like somebody went off the cuff and said, oh, you know, I'm a legislator and I can find some money. It wasn't that at all. So, any questions?
Daniel Chivo, Board of Ed, elected member of 10. So like yourself, I am an elected official. My job is to represent the people of Torrington. Now, a couple of things that I'd just like to point out. You're right, the field is not in ADA compliance, as is the high school, to the tune of $2.8 million to get the high school in ADA compliance. So I am aware of that fact, just so you know. My question to you is, obviously you've specified the fact that Board of Ed has nothing to do with the fields that it oversees, that its staff maintains, that the equipment is used on. It is a community field. I'm perfectly fine with that as long as the city of Torrington is taking it back. And then I don't need the staff to maintain the field. I don't need the staff to pick up the field. I don't need the staff to light the field. I don't have to pay the electricity bill. If that goes to the city of Torrington, as you sit there smugly and tell me that the 10 elected officials that sit here by the people of Torrington, I'm trying.
The Board of Ed will have to rent the field if you do that.
It's a community field.
If you give it back to the town, you'll have to rent it to use it for your own team.
I think
We're getting...
Hold on. We're going to talk to Michelle right now. Everyone else gets a chance to speak afterwards. We can't just have yelling in from everywhere. It'll take forever.
Somebody's got to get their facts right.
We will take the comments. We're going to get to you.
Let's be factual. That's all I'm saying.
We can't just. This is taking too long already. Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't like when somebody comes up and starts to say that the 10 people that sit here, that spend hours every week, like yourself, desperately trying to help the people of Torrington, are just sidelined.
well,
And I've been on the board since August of 2010, and this is, until I receive this information, the first I've heard of it. It wasn't something that the former superintendent, Chris Leone, ever passed along
What information?
about the grant.
The
or
grant came
request
about
to-
in May. So
but
the
I-
former superintendent would have had nothing to do with giving you the information of the grant.
Correct, but the planning for this started in 2007. And this information came in October of 2010.
With Dr. O'Brien.
So I wasn't aware of it, even though I was sitting on the board at the time.
Well, I think that's part of the problem. I think that
I
you guys
agree.
have a communication issue. And to call me smug is completely rude and disrespectful. And I don't appreciate it at all. And I would have gladly come here a month ago. Well, I would say not a month ago. Like I said, I was out of town because my grandfather died. If you're not getting information from people, that is not my fault. If you have questions, I am easily accessible. I live up the street. I'm in the book. I'm on the website. If you have questions, pick up the phone. It's the same thing that I would do. I have a responsibility to reach out to the superintendent. When your chairman called and asked me for questions and emailed me and asked me for questions, I gave him everything that I had at the time and explained everything else would come on or after August 28th. Also explained in one of those emails that is right here that I was out of town, that I was planning on being back on Wednesday. Now, if you have an issue with the fact that you are being left out of the process, that's not my issue. My responsibility is to the community, as yours is. But it's an urban development grant, which goes through the city. If you have an issue with that, then I think that's between the board and the city. But that's not an issue that you should have with me. And I think the issue that I really have is the fact that we're looking at $2.737 million. And there's not been one good thing said about it. And that's what I really have a frustration about.
But that's not true, Michelle. No one has said anything bad about the grant. We've asked for options. We've asked if there's a way to take, instead of spending the money on a field turf, which is our second part of this, is if we did a sod field and we saved $700,000-800,000, could we benefit and fix and build a baseball stadium or a softball stadium for our team that made it to the States this year? You know, it's not just about that one portion of our athletic fields.
And I think
so we wanted to ask Mr. Steiger, is it Dave or Dan? Dave, I'm sorry, you get it wrong. We wanted to ask him if there was latitude to move some of this money to not just focus on one part of our backyard, but to focus on the entire backyard.
But I believe I started giving you some of that information. And I have the emails that show you that I gave you some of that information. And I also explained the rest of that information could come after August 28th.
Yes.
I could have easily came down and given you every piece of information that you ever wanted. I know what you can use the money for. I know part of the question that was mentioned in a board meeting that I wasn't here for was that you would appreciate the money to work on budgeting, and Fiona had said we are losing teachers. And very clearly, an urban development grant is exactly what it says. It's not for educational purposes, it's for an urban development community project.
Right.
I could have explained all of that if I was ever given the opportunity to do so.
You're being given that opportunity right now, but you're now not being very respectful, because I don't like to be talked down to, and I'm not trying to talk down to you. The reason the meeting happened on the 21st is because our calendar comes out a year in advance. Your travel arrangements do not impact when the board has their monthly meeting. I can't help that. As an elected official that knows Robert's Rules of Orders, if 3 members of a board ask for a special meeting or ask for an item on the agenda, I have to put it on. Yeah, I don't get to just say, you don't get it. I don't have that authority. So when I have members ask for an item to be put on the agenda, we very simply stated, and I said that we didn't have the information. We pointed out that he was in, I believe, Idaho fighting forest fires, and that he would be back on the 28th and we would have the information.
But did once ever at that meeting you mention the fact that I could get you all of the information after the August 28th? Was that ever mentioned? And was it ever mentioned that I could come to the meeting and I could explain all of the questions that you might have?
It was mentioned that we would get the information after Mr. Steiger returned on the 28th, because that's what your email said.
But did you ever say we could reach out to our state representative who actually helped get the money and we could get information from her?
I said that the information would be available, that you told me the information would be available after the 28th. And that's true.
That's true.
And it was not a dig on anybody, that was just a fact.
No, go first.
If my recollection serves me correctly, the information that was provided was that, from you, Ken, was that you said that you were supposed to have the information from Michelle Cook by our meeting on the 21st.
The email says that you'll have it next Tuesday, and the email was August 15th. the next Tuesday would be the 20th.
The email says that he would be back on the 28th.
The email after that, you said you would have the information on Tuesday. We can,
I have it.
I don't, you can read it.
I have all
I have
of
it
them.
too, but I mean, that's, I'm not trying to put Michelle on the stand here. I don't think it's fair.
I just sort of think that my issue with this is that understanding more of the facts now, it seems like there has been transparency the whole time with the administration, with the facilities director, with City Hall, and we were at a meeting a couple weeks ago where it was like, we have no idea what's going on here. It's doom and gloom, and we're gonna have our hands tied to this, and it doesn't seem fair that we did that then, if everybody was in the loop the entire time.
Not everybody was in the loop.
Who wasn't in the loop?
Were you in the loop? Were you in the loop?
No, I wasn't, but I'm telling you, the administration was in the loop. Dave Becerra is on the grant, and we just sort of stand here at the last meeting, not knowing at all what this grant was about.
Because we didn't know. As a board, we didn't know, which was why we asked for the information.
And you didn't think to ask the administration or the facilities director before?
I did.
And they didn't give you an answer before?
They didn't have a copy of the grant.
Yeah, but Dave Becerra, his name is on the grant.
Someone wrote his name on the grant. Dave Becerra didn't write his name on the grant. Did you write your name on the grant?
No, I did not.
So, I mean, that's not fair. I mean, if he signed it, yes, I would expect him to have a copy.
And you weren't on the turf committee the entire time for this and involved with it? You were? Okay.
Does anyone have a question for Michelle?
Yeah, Michelle, you state that we could possibly have it, this all goes through as planned, construction can start approximately in December or January?
Ed Aram, is he next in line?
Oh, no, but it's all gone out the window.
Well, before we go to that point, I think what needs to be understood is City Council has got to approve the money. After City Council approves the money, we have the ability to turn around now and put it out for bid. And if we can get this turned around quickly, absolutely we could possibly start some of our construction as early as November and December. But obviously we live in New England and weather permits a lot of things.
There's a couple things that have to
But
be done.
it just points out, I mean, when you say that it's not really a board's issue, we have track and field, which starts, I assume, in March. I mean, would the facility be down for the entire spring?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
what does the Board of Ed do with all of those athletes for that period where they practice and have their meetings?
I can answer that question with a question.
Okay.
What does the board do when the athletes are told they can't compete on that field and track anyway because it's deemed unsafe?
Well, in our budget, we don't have transportation money. That's what Andrew's trying to ask. Right now, it's not deemed unsafe. So
Well,
right now, we have a functioning track.
Well, the point, I mean, the real point I'm trying to make is that it seems like, for whatever reason, there's just a little bit of adversarialness going among many different factions here tonight, and it really has nothing to do with anyone being adversary, just that we, as a board, are totally out of the loop on this, and we need to be brought back in, not necessarily for the money that the grant will award to the city of Torrington, but we have administrative responsibility. We have duties to our athletes, and if we're not brought into the loop as far as this facility being ripped up and not being available for our athletes in the spring, that's something that, just out of respect among all the
Agreed.
parties, needs to be addressed. It's shameful that Mayor Bingham doesn't feel like tonight's meeting would have been important for him to come to, being that we're really, as far as this grant is concerned, onlookers, just waiting to see what the mayor and you and the State Bonding Commission does as far as granting this money. So the fact that he doesn't feel that it's important for to keep the real beneficiary of this grant informed, that's on him, not on you, not on the chairman of the Board of Education.
It's
Well,
really, I
his-
think, a Board of Ed City Council discussion that has to
Well,
happen.
it's
They-
technically not, because what she's telling me is this grant is urban renewal and development, and whatever our say is, it doesn't affect their decision. And it really is a decision that's made with the mayor, city council, and the state.
It's really how the city,
How
they run the project. Do they put the project through the Board of Ed because we maintain it, or do they run it
But
themselves?
she said it doesn't run through the Board of Ed.
It runs to the city, but the city could have anyone build it. The city could assign it to the Board of Ed and have the Board of Ed run it through
Well,
their normal procedures.
Yeah, but that's not in our right to state that we will or will not be
No,
involved.
that's why I said it has to be a discussion between us and the city council.
The mayor's chief of staff is here, and I know that the mayor is not
chief of staff
here,
isn't the mayor.
but he is the liaison for the mayor's the mayor's office in this project, and so, to his defense, he's my go-to guy in this situation, and that's all I can say about that.
We have two schedules.
And there's one other point, though. When you say it's an urban renewal and development project, the main beneficiary of this project will, though, always be the school district.
It'll be-
And I understand it's great that the public will get to utilize it, but 80–90% of the utilization of that field will be for the actual Torrington School Board,
It's the students and the athletes of the
Right.
Torrington Public Schools,
which will be the main beneficiary.
which
So-
is the community.
Well, I mean, for the school board to be the main beneficiary of something and yet have such little voice or input into the decision-making process, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, it's just what the law is, it's hard to really understand from where I sit, that as a board member and as the board, we will have such little input into a facility which will service the students in which we have an obligation as board members to oversee now and into the future. But I think it's just a lack of communication. I don't think that there's any hostility between anyone here.
I understand that.
We do have two schedules that we worked up. One, that
Who are you?
Ed Aram, 2291 Torrenford West Street. We have two schedules for construction, one after the season and one before the season. The one is after the season is about beginning of May 11th, and it ends August 17th. And then the closeouts would be the end of August 31st. The other one we're looking at both. Definitely we have to contact the Board of Ed to see what is available. We have another schedule that starts approximately April 15th. It's better to start after the winter because of in New England with the winter thaw and so forth. Couple of things that have to be spoken. One is that we have to get an A1 survey for the whole property. So because of the shifting of the grandstands over to the softball, that we need an A1 survey for the total property because we have to go to planning and zoning. That will go out to bid. Once we finish that and we have all that stuff, we go out to bid for an architect, a landscape architect. Once he's set up, there's money in there, $120,000, which will be less than that because he has a number of things to do before he earns $120,000. Because the last part is contract administration, where he's on board at whatever time we want him there to contract the administration to look at the contractor. We have two ways of doing the contract. One is an RFQ first, to find out qualifications of contractors, if they can do the job and if they're listed at the DAS website. Or we just go out to bid with an RFQ and RFP. We can also, what we've done in the past, I built a track and field and a football turf field in Region 15 when my last year there as assistant superintendent. We did that, we broke it down, what's the track gonna cost, what's the field gonna cost, and we gave four different turfs and 4 different tracks. So we're looking at that. So then you have an option of how are we gonna do it. So that's the way it's normally done, which I did one in Region 15.
Did this go out as separate bids?
No, it goes out one bid.
One bid?
And they have to list 4, we list 4 turfs and 4 tracks.
But as Michelle has very clearly laid out, we're not gonna have any say in it, because the city's gonna pick the track, and the city's gonna pick the field.
Right, but we also can ask, you know, people, you know, this is not, since 2009, a survey was done, there's 133 turf fields out there, which includes high schools, middle schools, and colleges. There are 14 that were in the planning stage as of 2009. Out of those 147 fields, 70 of them are high school or middle school. That's as of 2009. From 2009 to now, I know that Naugatuck's built one, Waterbury built one, Watertown, when I built mine, when I built the turf field, Watertown built their grass field. And they abandoned that grass field after and put in a turf field. And I have that article if you're interested. So just to let you know what people are doing, they're going to the turf fields. A couple of questions you had. 2010, I did a presentation to the Board of Ed on this whole cost and so forth. I have copies, and I gave copies to Mr. Traub, who was in both papers, Torrington Register, Waterbury Republican. Outlined everything, the cost and so forth. That was in 2010.
What month? I came on the board at the end of August.
I couldn't tell you. I'll give you a copy. I don't know.
You're making a point that I didn't.
I didn't say you. I'm just telling. This is the facts. I'm just telling you the facts.
Yes, but you're making a point to my comment.
Yeah, I'm just telling you. It was in the
I sat on
thing.
the board,
I don't think that date is relevant.
so.
I'm just telling you. You know, I mean,
I just
you
want
asked
to
about
clarify.
equipment. There's one piece of equipment, and it's in the bid. It's always given to the school system to use.
Which piece of equipment? Looking at your list.
It's in the bid specs for the turf. It's I'll call it a carpet sweeper.
Okay, like a Zamboni machine.
Well, no, it's
a vacuum.
It's a vacuum. Okay, but you know, from New York, we just hire somebody and just vacuum.
Okay, so that's in the $651,000.
Correct, and that's at $8 a square foot, which is high for a turf field. It's usually running, between $4 to $6 a foot. So when Barry Blades did that, the first thing also in 2010 when we gave it to the Board of Ed and so forth, we were looking at to go to the city because at that time the city's bonding indebtedness was going off. In 2011, $990,000 went off on the bonds. 2012, $760,000 went off on the bonds. 2013, $910,000 went off on debt service. And 2020, $1,485,000. So this is what we thought we would go to the city and have, because they're reducing the debt, we would put this on as a bond issue. Did not go through. So that's why Michelle was great enough to put this on to get the money, instead of going through debt service and so forth. And if you want to see those figures, we have them here. They were brought up on 2010.
So it was done in 2010, so it's October 2010.
Correct.
But Michelle, you stated you didn't go until this May?
That's two totally separate things. The turf committee has been working well before I got involved in this. And so the work that I actually turned in, the dollars and the plans, was from the work that the turf committee had been doing. I turned it in this past legislative session, but the work that had been done, the studies, the money, all of that came into play well before I came into
From
play.
2017
Correct.
when they gave it to you?
Well, right.
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 So it just seems like there was a lack of communication, and now that we have more information, we can decide who.
Well, we don't we're just recipients. We're not making any votes or any decisions.
But then we can make a more informed decision as to how we want to be involved. That's what I'm saying.
Ed, you want to speak to?
And I think that's very important. I think that it's very important that we have the coaches of the teams involved in this process. I think that they should be able to attend the meetings. I think they should have a say in the planning process. They're the ones that inevitably are putting our athletes on the fields and the tracks. I think that our band directors should have a say in the way that certain things are done. He is the one that's responsible for putting our incredible band on the field. So they're in,
He doesn't want field trips.
no, I know, but
Lots of grass.
their involvement is extremely important in this process. They should not be shut out of it. It's very important that we have their involvement. And that's why having your building, having Dave on the committee, you would have thought would have been involvement.
I mean, I just have a comment because there's so much animosity going on about this, and there's a lot of people that want this turf field. There's also a lot of people in the community that are outraged that we're even considering a turf field under these economic times. I understand we're getting the 2.7 million, which is great, but we have to maintain this going forward. We have to find money in our budget. So, we spend hundreds of hours during our budget this year. So to me, as an individual board member, the communication was a problem because I was getting talked to in the grocery store about something I didn't even hear anything about. So it is an issue, and people are concerned in a year where we underfunded our retirement benefits for the city workers, cut the Board of Education budget, and now there's words in the street that we can come up with whatever deficit this turf field is going to cost, and people are angry.
But I think that, in all due respect, I think that it was misled and totally misrepresented, and that's not my fault.
Absolutely not. I don't think it's anybody's fault, but what I'm
But I
saying
think,
is,
but I think the point
it's not
is,
just about a gift, Michelle, though, and that's what I think the big misinterpretation is. The grant money is wonderful. This is going to cost us money that we need to find in our budget. So if we're going to be responsible as members of the Board of Education, I need to understand what these costs are going to be going forward and what the replacement in 15 years. There's some numbers here, but quite frankly, I'm very uncomfortable looking at numbers that are 3 years old and being told we have absolutely no say in what happens to this. The city does, but we're going to foot all the bills after this goes in. I'm worried about that.
but you do it right now. You all are responsible
don't,
right
though.
now for your maintenance. Yes, you are.
We
In 2010,
know what
We
that
know
costs.
what it
yes,
is.
Right.
it's
And you
$21,832 in 2010 that you put in your budget to do aerate the field, marking the field, mowing the field, fertilize the field, aerate the field, seed and overseed, and irrigation. You had it in your budget, $21,832. If you, the emails that you receive from other school systems, between $3,000 and $5,000 to do the fields, to sweep them. The lines are already in. You don't have to do anything with markers. You don't have to. There will be water there just in case in August if you need to spray the field. But in 7 years in Region 15, we have never sprayed the field with water. So that's what you have in your budget in 2010 was $21,832. You need $3,000 to $5,000 a year to do it. 1% you put away, like other school systems have done, in 15 years.
You gotta remember.
Correct, I know.
Slashed badly, so to bank on the fact that we're gonna be able to come up with.
Well, if you put,
1%
if
of our
you,
budget,
if you have $21,832, deduct $5,000, you can put that money aside into an account.
But if you go to turffield.com and you go on and you look at the average cost of maintenance around the country for these fields, it's not 3 to 5. It's much higher than that. It's not out of line with what we currently spend. But you do have to, and our concern is 10 years from now, because again, the people that make the field turf say 8 to 10 years. I know this is based on 15 years, Dave, you found. But 10 years from now, and we need $733,000, where do we get it? I mean, is the city, and this again, it's nothing to do with you two, this again, why we need to have a conversation with city council, is are we going to be required in our capital budget to plan for that, which is something we don't currently have to do.
But what are you going to do for the track now?
No one's arguing the track needs to be
Well,
repaired.
no, when you're thinking about that $700,000, what would it cost for, because you may not be able to have your track team running on that this spring.
Yep.
So if you have to either tell your track team, I know Andrew, transportation costs are important, you may be sending them somewhere else anyway. What would just replacing the track cost when you think about potentially $700,000 10 years from now? don't know what a new track costs, but it seems like there's a lot of questions, and what would be wonderful is maybe we could get them all written down. And why not get them to the committee? The people have been willing to work for 6 years, and maybe we could try and answer them for you. And all the stuff about communication, I can agree with, but I'm wondering why we're looking backwards. Because that
I
doesn't,
agree. Thank you, Paul.
so that's all. I mean, how do we move forward? I did hear Fiona say it's a wonderful thing, $2.7 million. So maybe there's a way we can answer some of your questions, help you out with that. Think about what a new track might cost and how, if you were going to put that in, what does that do to the $700,000? Obviously, that's a concern. Your maintenance is a concern. And if we...
That was part of our second part of this that we're going to get to is, there was no argument in taking, in the track, when I went to high school here, the track was scheduled to get resurfaced. It still hasn't.
Right.
All right, and I ran on it back in, ending in 1982. So, I mean, I knew it had to be done then. It was part of a building project. It got taken off. We haven't, you know, in what I had asked Dave to look at, which is numbers we're going to get to in a minute here, had nothing to do with anything with the track. It was leaving the track getting replaced. It was simply looking at regular sod versus the $700,000 for the field turf.
I get it.
And what we could do with that $700,000 if we looked at the other fields. And that was just something I asked for. It wasn't anything the rest of the board
You know what,
asked
that's a great question. It's not, that is a
But we
great
can't
question.
change that, and that was why we wanted to ask him. If we change that, then we have to reapply.
Right, but still, I mean, it's questions like that. I think you have questions. Fiona's concerned about whether there is an issue in terms of cancer-causing agents and all that. You know, I don't know if you could write all your questions down, you know, get them to us and let us see if there's information we can come up with to try and help the, you know, I don't know. It's
There
just
was a staph
me talking.
infection epidemic that the Quinnipiac soccer team ran into this year.
Right,
from
and
an
there was one
outside
down
field.
with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with everything that they have, those things happen. You can get them from wrestling mats, you can get them on a grass field. All those things
I got
happen.
to take a sheetrock down in my house.
Right, so, but that's the point. Putting grass in doesn't take that issue off the table.
Yes, I agree.
So, you know, all I'm saying is, if that's a question you have, it's a great question, why don't we just find out what they are and see what we can do instead of arguing about what already happened? Because I don't see, all right, was there a lack of communication? You know what I would say? Yeah, probably by everybody in the room involved with it. Nobody did it on purpose. We're all volunteers here. I don't think any of you get paid to do what you're doing. I'm not either. So sometimes mistakes get made. Okay, there was a lack of communication. My feeling is, I don't care. What can we do to move forward? And that's all I really like to try and do. So if there's questions, give them to us. Let's see if we can help answer them. That's all.
$1 million for the track,
Yeah.
so roughly, depending on the surface and what kind of, and we have to expand it to 8 lanes. And right now it's 6. And we have to expand it to 8 lanes because that makes us invitational compliant, which means we can hold competitions here, which is a revenue stream for Torrington.
We don't have to make it. We'd like to.
If we're renovating it, we're gonna make it 8. And that's been discussed by the turf committee.
Ed, when you started this, were you intending this to be a bond, or were you intending this to be a grant?
Well, the first thing we looked at was bonding, because of what I told you about the reduction in the debt service for the city of Torrington.
Right.
Right. That didn't go too far, okay? So then Michelle came up with an idea to go to a grant, and
And the reason why I bring this up is because I remember being on the board, and that in the board's desire to look into this issue, and we didn't go forward with it because it was going to be an expenditure for the board and the city. This is totally different in the sense that this is a grant.
correct.
So when you there's kind of an implication that we were always looking at the same apple from day one until now. It's not that way in reality, because the apple we were looking at in the beginning was going to be something that the city was going to have to pay for, and now it's a much nicer apple because it's going to be given to us,
Right.
and that's great. But when people say there's, everybody should kind of know what was going on for the last 6 years, things have definitely changed just by how it's going to be
Funded.
paid for.
Right.
So things change, time changes, and now we're on the right page and we're all happy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I said?
No, I know that. I just think that despite the remark from our board member, I think, thank you for $2.7 million for going to bat for us. I think that's phenomenal. And $1.
What happened to the 25 cents?
2.737.
But the proposal has 25 cents on it. Do you know what happened to that?
Don't forget that.
No?
We got it.
Okay. Any other discussion on this item before we open up to the floor? Well, the rest of the numbers are irrelevant because we can't change the field. I think the next step for us is to sit down with city council and determine who ultimately is going to be responsible for the project and the maintenance of the project and the replacement of it down the road. Because if they go with field turf, it does have a shelf life. And Region 13 and most of the, if you go on any of the websites, they recommend that almost like the vehicle replacement fund, that a turf replacement fund be set up. Because we can only save 1%, we'll never get to that $700,000 number, no matter what, because you can only have 1% carried from year to year. So we would have to have the city agree to set aside a turf replacement fund.
We don't have to have the city agree to anything, because this isn't our decision.
Well, I'm saying we have to ask, because down the road, when that field runs out and this grant doesn't exist, because if I heard correctly, you cannot get a grant for a replacement.
That was never asked.
All right, well, I was told that. All right, I'll take that back. Can you get a grant for a replacement?
Well,
It is possible? Okay.
$2.7 million 5 years ago wasn't possible, but it was possible now. I don't think that it's something we bank on.
Right, well,
But I mean, the thing, the same thing I said to Cheryl earlier today. If you guys are applying for grants, or are you looking for grants, you gotta let us know. I mean, we're your biggest advocate up there, so if it's something that you all are interested in,
we want this one-page form. We don't want these 90-page, 300-signature forms. We want this.
we're
nice
just
little
the advocate,
one-page.
we're not the applier most typically.
But this was
This one was simple,
if you want to do something, get us a form like that, so it's easy. Just
That was
fill it
that
out
arrow?
and send it in.
so
But,
that was it.
Region 13 is putting $60,000 a year away that the city is putting into a revolving fund so that they have the money when it comes time to replace the fields.
To get this into our budget process.